just as an aside, in case people are wondering why we're shouting at each other across in such a distance, is this is being filmed. I don't even know what today's date is, but it's like the middle of November, and this
14th, November 14th.
It was 14th. Okay,
Yeah.
So and obviously the COVID virus is still with us and raging in other parts of the country. It's on the rise here in New York City, but not as bad, fortunately. But so anyway, it's hard to record these things with the masks on. So that's why we're without the mask, but standing as far away as possible. So we're standing in front of a painting. Well, I guess.
Wait, I might say that we're both very responsible in terms of wearing masks as much of the time as we do in our daily lives. So this is an exception, and we're probably being very cautious and safe in the rest of our lives, unlike a lot of other people. So, yeah.
Nameless other people.
Yes.
But anyway, so yes, and if you saw Lester's mask that he wears when he's in transit on the subway, it has a, let's just think hazmat. Anyway, so we're standing in front of a painting. I don't even know really to say because we've never talked about it. In the title, it's RBG, which is obviously a reference to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But what I'm curious about, was it specifically inspired by, or after you painted it, was it just coincidental with her passing? Because this is very new. Or was it something you really wanted to do in terms of to sort of honor her? So that's a priori. I'm just a little, I'd like to just clarify that just for my own self, because and the reason why we're focusing, that's the host of questions, but the reason why we're focusing on this is you also had painted, and again, another person who just recently passed away, John Lewis. So there's another painting in the exhibition. It's very red, white, and bluish, and we had mentioned it earlier. We referred to it just by its color palette, but didn't mention the name. And again, and I know historical figures and moments in history and culture have also been something that has, I wouldn't say inspired you, because sometimes you do this out of frustration, and clearly what was happening with both of these people, or the recognition of their careers and lives, and sort of the current contemporary response to that was something that really moved and affected you. But so that's why I think this is sort of an interesting painting to talk about. But at the same time, we want to cover the text, which is a poem that you wrote, and they are peppered throughout the show and will be in the catalog. And so that's what we really want to kind of cover here. So why don't you tell me, what is the genesis of, we know where you came with these motifs and they come out of your meditation, but in terms of the naming of this painting and honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg, speak to that. Okay,
so first off, the genesis of the painting was an expression of the darkness of our times in terms of COVID and the political reality. And I had painted the background, the first part of the painting, which was the background and the white vertical spray. And that was done. The next day I was going into the studio. That night was Ruth's death, Ruth's passing. So it was like a confluence of the tragedy, what that meant, and the full title of the painting is For RBG and Our Abyss. So the abyss part was what I was going to do, and finishing it the day after was why it was for RBG.
Got it.
I might point out that two things. One, I've never told you this, but people's passing.
Here we go again. Awesome.
Yes, people's passing has when I was the first time. I painted a picture about a relative who died, was when I was doing the Gifts to the Universe.
Oh,
so
okay.
my expression of response to somebody who is important in my life, whether they're a politician or a family member, I often have painted a picture about that, starting back in the 80s.
Okay.
In terms of political connections, 2017, after having our still sitting president starting to do his shtick, I needed to try and process that. And prior to that, I was painting a series of pictures called A New Chapter. And I used that imagery of a pour and a disc or two and painted 6 paintings called Diogenes in the White House. Diogenes, if you don't know, being the Greek philosopher who went around with a lantern looking for a truthful man. And after that series, it then morphed into American Nightmare Suite, which was 5 paintings which were even darker. I was able to let that go artistically after I did that. It was like, okay, I've purged my creative need to express all of that horror, and then I went on to and then I went on to paint the waking up paintings, which led directly to into the mystery.
Yeah.
And painting those politically cri de coeur paintings got me to an expressive place that I brought to what came after. So again, my journey has always been about being present and processing and absorbing what I've done to help me go someplace else.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I would like to point out that the bottom spray in these Into the Mystery paintings, which I began to do with the Waking Up paintings, is related to Rothko's Feathering Edges and the Great Turners, where the sky and the sea are joining. I always found Turner has been a very person who I relate to. I engage with his work very, very much, and the single disc, the discs in Turner's, those yellow discs, and the ethereal nature of the relationship between the sea and the sky is something that I always enjoy.
Well, yeah, I didn't bring it up because we haven't really talked much about it. Not that that's clearly an issue in this discussion, but there is an element of the sublime, that's more present in these single disc paintings, and so and inherently then but this also inherently brings in sort of a horizon line, and especially with a sphere, you think sun, moon. So yeah, it's, the Turner is a good point. I definitely see that. But yeah, and that's something that we'll have to ponder some more, and I have to look back at other work of yours. But yeah, the sublime is definitely something in this sort of this whole nature and being in awe of nature, which isn't really conceptually a stretch given your interest in cosmology and astrology and just these kind of expansive sort of astral spaces and what have you. So yeah, I definitely see that. And but it's and this one I don't know. I'll have to ask the videographer, is this showing up? Yeah, the orb, can you see the, okay. So you can see that there's, this is actually sort of a really dark blue and black, and probably it looks like on a white ground or a light colored ground. And then this is the same colors, but it seems like darker, more black.
It's more black, but it's also got a red in it. So it's a warmer, it's a different color than
sometimes you have to get straight on and not at an angle to look at these. But anyhow. So anyway, it's very subtle, very, very subtle. There's another one, Aha.
Is Ahab.
Oh, Ahab.
Yeah.
That relates to this in that it's very tonal and very...
Which came before. This came after is Ahab,
right.
Ahab.
Yeah, this one actually, I love the that blue, that midnight blue in there. That's really quite nice. So let's talk about the text. And not this text specifically, but just in general. When did the poetry come about?
There have been maybe 3 or 4 times since 72, 73 that I felt compelled to write poetry. Most of it is gone. I have some at the studio.
You mean the poems themselves or the compulsion?
The compulsion is gone.
Okay.
Maybe someday I'll have the compulsion again. There are some that I have in the studio that were written around 1973 that I never put, never made into like a presentable page. But they're almost like artists writing on paper. So there are a few of those left. They're very different from these. But there have been 3 or 4 times, and they've always, and I didn't stop making art. These were in conjunction with what I was doing. It was as if I needed to.
Well, which is why we integrated them with the work. So yeah, they're not an aside.
Yeah, there was this need to verbalize, and unlike my art where I'm very aware of my predecessors, and my art is a kind of dialogue with the past and with the future, hopefully. The poems I don't have that kind of connection to poetry. So these are more like outsider poetry, almost, you could call them.
Outsider poetry.
Yeah. So to make up a term, yeah. But they're very much a crystallization of my understanding of where we are in the universe. And so I thought that they would make a wonderful counterpoint to the show, because the show is about my understanding of where we are in the universe. Now, these were done, I think all of these were done around 1994. But I think there's a wonderful resonance with the imagery and the paintings. The imagery and the poetry, the ideas about who we are in the universe, and the paintings.
But also there's a feel with a number of them that are sort of the state of mankind.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, absolutely.
Which clearly when you think about them in relationship to more cultural, and cultural is maybe not the right word, because her life and her impact spanned decades, just like John Lewis. But it is cultural, I guess, because all the things that she worked on throughout her life and John Lewis, we're still working on. And so, it's just different groups of people becoming part of that movement, or responding or reacting to their work and what they felt their life's purpose, is. So I guess they are cultural, I guess is a good word, because they continue, because what their work was about was something so profound and so broadly reaching and impacting so many people. And I think that's what makes them, you know, every time you hear their names or whatever, it resonates with people in different ways, but it resonates with people because the work is so impactful, you know, and their actions and how they approach it is so profound and helps inspire other people. So it's kind of interesting. And there have been others throughout your career, but these two happen to be very timely and very interesting, given the sort of the state of things, you know, in our country and internationally with the pandemic and just, you know, this confluence of it seems like so much drama going on right now. But,
as an aside, one of the first, in the last show, you showed a painting, Eiffel. Eiffel. It was
oh, you mean your show upstairs?
Yeah,
I thought you meant a current show upstairs.
Yeah, Eiffel. And that was the first show where I had an interior pour, and it was in response to the joyousness I used to get watching Gwen Eiffel on PBS. And this was before she passed. But it was that when I watch TV, I am totally awake visually. Totally. And a curious story, we got a mailing from a cable network saying, if you join us, we'll give you a free 4K TV. So I went and checked out the 4K TVs and fell in love with the light emanating from them. Ultimately, their plan would have cost us more, so we didn't get that plan, but my wife said, go buy the TV. and it's I get enthralled by the light and the color that I see on the TV and the spaces. It's like gymnastics for my eyes, and the color experience can be so generative for me. And you know, these came after the 4K TV, so.
Oh, okay.
And I took it off my taxes.
And on that note, so anyway, hopefully everybody will go and look at the work online, and the catalog will be up probably soon. You said today's the 14th, so hopefully by when the show opens on the 18th, it'll be up. But anyway, thank you for a great body of work, and keep going.